And we're back at Motor Cars of the Main Line for your consideration. 2016 Porsche 911 GTS, just below a GT3, just below a Carrera S. It's the just right supercar. We're going to hear that 430 horsepower, naturally aspirated flat six, 3.8 liters, no blower. 'Cause remember, this is a 9911. Sport Plus mode, Sport Chrono, Sport Exhaust, part of the GTS package, which is a full encompassing performance enhancement. Now, this is technically a Carrera. It is a Carrera GTS, so just above the S, and you got to remember, below a GT3. So what it gives you is it gives you a lot of the hard-edged performance of a track car, but it can also scale back the intensity for the road. Now, an Agate Grey Metallic over black, this car has 36,000, about 261 miles. It is a 7-speed manual transmission, and this generation, the 991, was the first series production car to have a 7-speed manual transmission. The car starts with the engine, and I'm sorry to say there's not a whole lot to see. This being a 991, you've got a small service panel that lifts up and not a whole lot more, but I can describe what sits below. So if the standard Carrera S of this time would have been about 400 horsepower, this is 430. 325 pound-feet of torque. It's communicated to the ground through a limited slip differential, so it can actually lock up the rear wheels to a degree to put the power down on both sides. What it also has is Porsche Torque Vectoring, which allows a differential braking system to brake an individual wheel as it starts to lose grip. So instead of being a traditional joy kill type traction control system that retards spark timing or throttle when you start to slip, it will allow the throttle to run wild, but it will brake the wheel that is slipping in order to vector the torque to the side where it can do the most good. Now, there's a lot that goes into the GTS in addition to the more powerful engine, and you could argue that it's actually these other elements that define the GTS. Some of them are aesthetic, so let's count those. We've got the sport design front end, we've got sill extensions, we've got GTS badging, we've got blackened 20-inch center lock wheels. That's part of the package too. Center lock, just like a race car, 1 point of fixture. And we've also got elements inside the car we'll talk about. Moving along to the back, you can see we've got a black center panel on the rear fascia, that's down there. And an element that's fascinating on the GTS is if you get a Carrera 4 GTS, you actually wind up with a little light bar between the rear tail lights, so you know it's a two-wheel drive just based on that. Taking a look at the rear deck, we have a blackened grille over the engine. That's a throwback to the 911s of the 1970s. And an important element of the car is that even though it is a two-wheel drive GTS, you could get a convertible or coupe, two-wheel drive or four, you get the Carrera 4 body shell, so it's 44 millimeters wider at the back with a commensurately broader track, so it actually does have both aesthetic and road holding consequences. And the road holding, courtesy of, I believe, a 72.9-inch rear track, gives the car just a little bit more of a planted stance out back. You can see that the car features interior elements that are related to the GTS specification. You can see we have a sport design steering wheel, microfiber suede. You'll see it on the boot as well as the knob of the 7-speed transmission. You can see the center console, the center inserts of the seats, opposite door card, flanking door card on the driver's side. Now we'll take a look at some of the condition elements. You can see the sill on the driver's side is in fantastic shape. We have Carrera GTS specific sill panels, and what we've got here, for those of you who have a really short attention span, I've got something for you. So you can just sort of pause and screenshot this if you really want to just see what this car's got. But it's got the Premium Package Plus, which includes a lot of stuff. So Premium Package Plus includes things like keyless entry, keyless go, auto dimming exterior and interior mirrors. We also get things like, in this instance, 18-way heated and vented seats with 3 degrees of memory. Moving into the car now, you can see we've got a Porsche PCM 3.1. Now, this gives you a lot of things like a native navigation. It gives you the ability to make wireless phone calls via Bluetooth. You can stream wirelessly your music selections. It's not full-blown phone mirroring. We're not quite there in a 2016 9911, but there are aftermarket accessories if you want to go in that direction. There's a lot of fun built into this car, including some of the funkiest cup holders you're going to find anywhere. Now, these are sports seats. They're not merely 18-way luxuries. These are actually exceptionally bolstered, so they will hold you in place. You can see the bolsters on the passenger side, seat back as well as seat bottom, are beautifully intact. Taking a quick look at the lower card of the driver's side door, which is often a kick target for people entering and exiting cars. You can see it's in absolutely excellent shape. Taking a look at the door jamb, always an indicator of generally how well the car was stored and cleaned, whether it lived outside, whether it saw a lot of sleet, slush, and salt. Absolutely nothing in that regard. We'll come back in, but let's take a quick look at the driver's side seat bolster. You can see the seat bottom bolster as well as the seat back bolster, beautifully preserved. We'll take a look at the back. Of course, the rear seats of a 911, the ultimate thrill ride for a kid. Probably not something you'd want to use for an adult, although the 991 was a significantly larger 911, and so these rear seats are a little bit more viable. But as ever, the number one attraction is the ability to fold them down, so you have a lot of storage space once these are down, and then you've got a parcel shelf behind that with tie downs, so it is actually quite practical. Taking a look at the seat back of the driver's side, you can see it's beautifully intact. There's no kicking, no gouging. You can see the same is true over on the passenger side. Taking a look at the headliner, it's microfiber suede. That's part of the GTS specification. Beautifully equipped car. We're going to go back to the cheat sheet real quick in case you're wondering what you're getting here. You're getting things like keyless entry and drive, auto dimming exterior and interior mirrors, deluxe ambient interior lighting, including things like footwells and sills. You've got the Bose sound package. So in this car, you've got 12 speakers, you've got a subwoofer, and you've got a 445 watt amplifier. So if you want to blow your eardrums out, you can easily do so. Also important, park assist with cameras. And so we'll do a quick fly around of the car so you can get a sense of some of the dimensions, the parameters of the park assist. We'll take a little look at the rear end where you can also see the blackened exhausts. Sport exhaust with high bypass. It not only sounds better, it actually adds a little bit of high-end punch. We're going to go inside the car and talk about performance modes in a moment because this car does have quite a few of them. And we're just going to fly around the car. I should mention that this car has PPF application, so the expensive and the hard work of protecting it has been done. We're going to take a quick look inside the trunk now. The car does have a regularly shaped and deep trunk, and it's important to note that although it may not look like there's a lot of space in there, combined with the parcel shelf and the fold-down seats, you can really go grand touring in this car across the American or European continent. And you can see here, we have a very deep trunk here. I'm going to use my leg as my customary reference point. This is all the way up to my knee. So there's quite a lot of space in there to fit luggage, and it's a useful shape. It's not some sort of weird ultra shallow, ultra long European trunk. Also important, we've got Porsche dynamic lighting here. So the Porsche dynamic lighting system does a few things. First, it is basically intelligent. It's a cornering light system, so it will steer around corners. This is part of the GTS specification here. What it will also do is it will affect dispersion as well as how it aims the focal point of the lights. So the faster you're going, the further ahead and the more dispersed the light will be, so you can more easily see hazards that may be approaching as you fly down the road at night. Also important is that it has a weather mode to minimize glare in conditions that might involve a lack of clarity. Think heavy rain, think fog. This is going to work in your favor in that regard. It has a setting for those conditions. Taking a look at the weather stripping as well as the condition around the edge of the trunk. This speaks to the condition of the car as well as the fact that it was stored almost exclusively indoors by its previous owner. You can take a look at the sport design front end. This gives you a little bit more of the aesthetic of something like a GT3. You can see that it's actually very similar in most regards. It doesn't have the mail slot vent just above the bumper, but this is a fascia that is unique to the higher performance Porsches, and it's something that's part of the GTS package. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the 991 real quick. For 2012, which was the first model year here, we saw the first full redesign of the 911 since the 996 back in 1999. The 997 was a 996 with a lot of mods. This is an all-new car. The biggest change is due to the wheelbase. Of course, a lot of folks said this was the first big 911, and I don't dispute the point. It definitely has more of a presence, but no individual dimension really grew quite as much as the wheelbase, which is now 3.9 inches longer from end to end. And what that does, in addition to giving you a lot more interior space and helping out the beleaguered 911 backseat passengers for once, but you've got more longitudinal stability. Now, the other thing it has that was just as important is if you can imagine the driver staying fixed and the engine staying fixed. The rear wheels were brought 3 inches back with respect to the engine. That doesn't turn it into a mid-engine. It doesn't become, you know, a IMSA 911 RSR, but what it does become is a slightly less pendulum-like rear engine arrangement. Now, one thing that I've always found a little bit odd about the 991s is whether you're getting standard brakes or carbon ceramics, the rotors themselves always look a little bit small for the wheels. Don't be deceived by that. These are some of the finest brakes on the market, past or present. 0 to 60 with the 7-speed manual transmission and the Carrera 2 setup, which is what this is fundamentally, is going to be about 4.2 seconds, and it's going to run the corner in about 12.2 at 116, 117 miles an hour. We're going to get into the car now and talk a little bit about some of the performance privileges that come with the GTS specification. Of course, we've got the sport design steering wheel. And what we might do here, if we can, is demonstrate some of the modes. You can see Sport Plus has been selected. A lot of what comes with the GTS is hardware that you could option up if you really wanted on a Carrera S. So this does have the exclusive 430 horsepower engine, but things like Porsche Active Suspension Management, Sport Plus mode, the Sport Exhaust, things like the Sport Chrono package, which gives you the Sport Plus mode, but also a sort of launch control and a chronograph on the dashboard. It gives you the time, but it's also a chronograph that can log your time as, for example, you might be lapping. The launch control mode lets you get the most out of the engine and the drivetrain. It's not going to be as fast as a Carrera 4. It's not going to be as fast as a PDK, but it's going to be much, much, much more involving because you are operating the transmission yourself, and you can go as fast as your skills will accommodate. Again, we've got really cool elements in here that make the car more livable, and some of these things, like little pockets in the door side, are so clean they appear to have never ever been used. The Bose system has excellent fidelity, it has excellent power. It's actually quite a bit better at lows and highs than previous Bose systems. Porsche and Bose did put a lot of work into this. We're going to take another look at the door pockets over here. Things that should be kept in mind here is that you've got a cheat sheet if you just want to activate the raciest version of the car. So Porsche Active Suspension Management is a variable valving system for the dampers. You've got several modes, and you can operate them independently if you want, but going with Sport Plus gives you all of the power of which the car is capable. So this is going to be the most aggressive damper setting, the most aggressive throttle mapping. It's going to be the most aggressive setting for the Sport Exhaust, so it's going to be louder. And if you want to operate the Sport Exhaust independently, just as you can raise and lower the rear wing if you want, independent of the speed that normally activates it, you can do that. You can operate the Sport Exhaust, you can be obnoxious, you can turn off active stop start modes, you've got control over stability control permissions. Sport is very sporty. Sport Plus is all out. It's going to also include the stability modes. So you've got dampers, you've got throttle, and you've also got the Sport Exhaust and the stability control tied up in the Sport Plus mode. So if you want to go lapping on a trap, you want Sport Plus. In terms of capabilities here, we can work our way through what is offered. You can see we've got the ability to pair our phone. Again, it doesn't have Apple CarPlay, it doesn't have Android Auto. There are aftermarket setups if you wish on this generation. What you can also see too is that it is a touchscreen. So in terms of quality of life issues, you've got quite a bit of flexibility to navigate without having to pay attention to buttons or knobs. Although I find it nice to see that we do have hard buttons and knobs here. Screens would become a bit of a dictatorship of technology later on after the 9911, and I like the fact that this is fairly straightforward. The fader, the equalizer, all of that stuff you can navigate to fairly easily along with the navigation system itself. You've got the map if you just want to see where you are. We're in King of Prussia. The sports steering wheel is quite beautiful. It's minimalist. As you can see, it's got a combination of metal, leather, and microfiber elements, and it gives you maximum legibility of the gauge cluster here. And I'm not sure how well the phone is actually picking this up because we do have a few issues with the phone's autofocus. But for the most part, you can see that this is a very sporting arrangement with the tachometric scale and the engine speed visible in the center. And I believe that redline is somewhere around 7,400, 7,600 with the fuel cutoff in this car at 7,900. And remember, naturally aspirated. There were huge changes with the 9912 after 2015, and this is a 9911 even though it is a 2016 GTS. For the 9912 we gained turbocharging, which killed a lot of the character of the car, and not everyone likes that. Although it came with more power, it also anesthetized the experience somewhat. So taking a final look here, you can see that the last element we haven't mentioned is the dynamic engine mounts. Now this is something fascinating that uses magneto-rheological technology to prevent the engine from shifting on its mounts quite as much when the rheostatic stiffness is dialed up. What this does is it prevents the engine from moving in reaction to the drive shaft. So the faster the engine takes a set and stops moving, the faster it starts reacting against the drivetrain, and the faster it lays down the torque. So if you could prevent the engine from moving at all on its mounts, it would be a more immediate throttle pickup. Now, the other thing that's important to mention on this generation is that there is a little bit of piped-in sound. So in addition to the active exhaust, there is a system that takes some of the intake resonance and pipes it through a tube to a membrane in the back of the car, and that was new for the 991 generation. It's real sound, don't get me wrong, but it is being amplified and conducted to the driver in ways that are not entirely natural, but it's not fake sound a la BMW i8 or some kind of an EV. We'll take a look over at the passenger accommodations. And as you can see, once again, we have an immaculate sill panel, an immaculate door jamb, and absolutely no marks on the door itself. Now, this car is ready to roll along with the original factory fire extinguisher, which was part of the original kit. And you can see that we've got a lockable glove compartment with quite a bit of capacity. And inside, we've got a 12-volt accessory power slot. If you wish to power up accessories, you can do so quite easily. And this car is the ultimate driver's companion. That's probably the best way to describe it. This is a car that offers you a lot of flexibility to be aggressive as you want to be. It's good for track days, but it's also good for the commute. And some people say that, you know, all or nothing, go with the most basic Porsche or some sort of a GT2 RS. I like the idea of having a car that can do it all with competence across the board, but I want a manual transmission and I want a naturally aspirated engine. And after the 9911, very difficult to get that unless you want to step up to a GT3. So this is in some ways a last and best for the standard Carrera. In GTS spec, it's hard to beat. Reach out to Motor Cars, the main line, 484-612-4147, and imagine yourself in that seat right there.